This is so good. Let's run it back. In case you missed it, we just published our first ever collection of reader submitted stories. It was such a joy to see what you guys wrote, and it meant a lot to be able to publish it. We hope you love the stories as much as we do. Hey, how's it going? I'm here. Well, the snow had begun to fall over the small Montana town of Willow Creek, turning the wooden sidewalks slick and the rooftops white. Cole Harding, a tall, broad-shouldered cowboy with eyes the color of the prairie sky, had just returned from a long cattle drive. The town felt quieter than he remembered, as though winter had wrapped it in a blanket of stillness. Cole wasn't a man of many words, at least not the kind you said out loud. But the written word now, that was different. Over the years, he had found a strange comfort in putting pen to paper. He could say things there he could never bring himself to say in person. It was at the small general store, while picking up flour and coffee, that he first saw her again, Clara Dawson. She was standing by the counter, her gloved hands wrapped around a small parcel. She wore a long black coat, her dark hair pinned neatly beneath a wool hat, and her eyes. They had a sadness in them, the kind that spoke of too many sleepless nights. Clara had been a widow for just over a year. Her husband, John Dawson, had been one of Cole's closest friends. They'd grown up riding the same trails, mending the same fences. John had been a good man, steady and kind. His death from a fever the winter before had struck the whole town, but no one harder than Clara. Cole tipped his hat politely as their eyes met. "Evening, Mrs. Dawson." She gave him a small, polite smile. "Evening, Cole." They exchanged no more than a handful of words before she stepped out into the snow, leaving behind the faint scent of lavender. Cole watched her go, something tugging at him deep inside. He had checked in on her a few times after John's passing, bringing over firewood or fixing the fence behind her barn, but their conversations had been brief, careful. He didn't want her to think he was intruding. That night, as the wind howled against the walls of his small cabin, Cole found himself at his desk, staring at a blank sheet of paper. He hadn't planned to write to her, but his hands seemed to move on their own. "Dear Clara, I don't pretend to know the kind of pain you've been through, but I reckon the nights must be the hardest. I just wanted you to know there's someone in this town who remembers John with you and who thinks of you more often than you realize." He paused, tapping the pen against the wood. It felt strange, almost dangerous, to be writing to her this way. But he didn't sign his name. Instead, he simply wrote, "Yours, a friend." The next morning, while delivering supplies to the post office, Cole slipped the envelope into Claire's box. He walked away quickly, heart pounding like he'd just robbed a bank. Days passed before he saw her again. This time, she was at the church, arranging flowers for Sunday service. He caught a glimpse of her smiling, really smiling, at something one of the women said. And when she turned and saw him, there was a warmth in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Over the next few weeks, Cole wrote more letters. Sometimes they were short, just a few lines about the beauty of the snowfall or the first signs of spring. Other times they were longer, sharing little memories of John or thoughts about the way the stars looked on a clear night. Always he kept them unsigned. Clara began writing back. "Dear friend, I don't know who you are, but your words have been like a lantern in a dark room. I haven't smiled this much in months. Whoever you are, thank you." Cole kept her letters in a wooden box under his bed. He read them over and over, marveling at how her words made his chest feel tight and light all at once. Winter slowly gave way to spring. The snow melted, the creek swelled with clear water, and the first wildflowers began to bloom along the fence lines. But with the change in season came a growing restlessness in Cole's heart. He wanted to tell her. He wanted her to know it was him, the cowboy who couldn't say much in person, but could fill a page with things he never dared to speak aloud. One afternoon, Cole rode into town and spotted Clara standing outside the bakery, holding a loaf of bread wrapped in paper. The wind caught a loose strand of her hair, and she laughed as she tucked it back. That laugh, it did something to him. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Dawson," he said, pulling his horse to a stop. She smiled softly. "Afternoon, Cole. You've been keeping busy." "Always." He hesitated, gripping the reins tighter. "You seem lighter these days, happier." Her eyes searched his face for a moment. "I suppose I am. Someone's been writing to me. Letters, kind letters. They've helped." Cole felt his pulse in his ears. "That's so." "Yes, I wish I knew who it was. It feels strange, confiding in a stranger. But also, it doesn't. Whoever it is, they seem to understand things most folks can't." He nodded once, tipping his hat before riding on, afraid that if he lingered any longer, the truth would come spilling out right there in the street. That night, Cole wrote again. But this time, the letter was different. "Dear Clara, I've been wanting to tell you something for a while now. The man who's been writing to you isn't a stranger, though maybe he's hidden behind these pages longer than he should have. It's me, Cole. I never wanted to overstep, but I couldn't stand seeing you carry that weight alone. If you'd rather I stop writing, I will. But if you'll have me, I'd like to keep writing and maybe someday sit across from you and say these things out loud." He stared at the letter for a long time before sealing it. The next morning, he placed it in her box and rode out to work the north pasture, his stomach in knots. 3 days passed. No reply. Cole told himself she was just busy. Maybe she needed time. But by the 4th day, doubt started creeping in like a cold draft under a door. Had he ruined everything? On the 5th day, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, there was a knock at his cabin door. When he opened it, Clara stood there, her cheeks flushed from the wind, her hands gripping something tightly. "Evening, Clara," he said, his voice low. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, handing him a folded piece of paper. "I believe this belongs to you." Cole took it, recognizing his own handwriting instantly. Before he could speak, she said, "I read it. More than once. I suppose I'm not surprised it was you. You're not?" "No," she said softly. "John used to say you had a way with words when you wanted to, and I felt something in those letters. A kindness. A patience. That's you, Cole." He swallowed hard. "I wasn't trying to replace him." "I know," she said. "And you couldn't. But you've helped me remember there's still warmth in the world. Still someone who cares if I'm smiling." They stood there in the quiet, the fire crackling in the stove. Cole had imagined this moment for weeks, but now that it was here, he found he didn't need grand speeches. "Would you let me keep writing to you?" he asked finally. She took his hand, her smile soft but certain. "Only if you promise to say some of those things in person too." From that day on, their letters continued, but so did their talks on her porch, in the churchyard after Sunday service, along the fence lines while the horses grazed. The words that had once been hidden on paper began to find their way into the open air. By summer, the whole town knew that Cole Harding and Claire Dawson were keeping company. Some folks said it was too soon, others that it was the best thing that could have happened. Cole didn't much care what they thought. What mattered was the way Clara's laughter came easier now, the way her hand fit in his when they walked together through the market. One evening, as they watched the sun set over the rolling hills, Clara leaned against him and said, "You know, Cole, I think John would have been glad for this. For us." He looked out at the horizon, the sky painted in shades of gold and rose. "I hope so. You've been a good friend," she said. "I'd like to be more than that," he admitted. She took his hand, her smile soft but certain. "You already are." And so the cowboy, who had once been too shy to speak his heart, learned that sometimes the words you write can carry you to the place. Yvette always wanted to be standing beside someone who not only reads them, but believes them and believes in you. Wow. So there you have it. Also, we are currently working on new merch. Stay tuned. See you next week.